The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's General Hospital flickered weakly over the emergency department corridor as Dr. Amelia Washington pushed through the glass doors at 11:47 p.m. Her scrubs were impeccably pressed, her white sneakers gleamed under the artificial lighting, and her stethoscope hung with military precision around her neck. But to most people in that hospital she was invisible, just another black nurse on the night shift, someone they could ignore, dismiss, or blame when things went wrong.
"Where have you been?" The harsh voice of Janet Morrison, the nursing supervisor, cut through the air like a blade. Janet was a 50-year-old white woman with hair pulled back in a bun so tight it seemed to stretch her entire face backward. Her cold blue eyes scanned Amelia from head to toe with disdain. "The patient in room 304 has been waiting for his medications for 20 minutes.
Amelia glanced at her watch discreetly. "My shift started 3 minutes ago, Ms. Morrison. I came straight from the locker room."
"Don't give me excuses," Janet snorted, waving a clipboard in the air. "Patients don't wait for you to get yourself together. And another thing, Mr. Patterson in room 3112 specifically complained about you last night. Says he doesn't trust someone like you handling his cardiac medications."
The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Amelia felt her jaw tighten, but kept her voice even. "I understand. I'll make sure to provide the best possible care to all patients."
"You better," Janet muttered, before walking away with sharp steps, her heels clicking against the linoleum floor. Amelia breathed deeply, inhaling the familiar cocktail of disinfectant, stale coffee, and human anxiety that permeated every corner of the hospital. She had smelled that mixture in dozens of hospitals over the years, but never quite got used to it. She walked toward the central nursing station, where 3 of her night shift colleagues were gathered around a computer, whispering and giggling among themselves.
"Oh, look who decided to show up," said Sarah Kim, a Korean-American nurse with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hope you're ready for a busy night. Dr. Hamilton is in a mood and has already yelled at 2 nurses.
"Dr. Hamilton?" Amelia asked, pretending not to know the name. "Chief of Cardiology," explained Maria Santos, a Latina nurse who had worked at the hospital for 15 years. "Thinks he's God's gift to medicine. Treats nurses like we're servants, especially the ones who—" She stopped abruptly, looking at Amelia with an uncomfortable expression.
"Especially the ones who don't look like him," Sarah completed with a nervous laugh.
Amelia nodded slowly, filing this information away. Over the next 4 hours, she experienced exactly what her colleagues had hinted at. Dr. Hamilton, a tall white man with perfectly groomed silver hair and a tan that screamed country club golf course, treated her as if she were completely invisible. When she tried to inform him about concerning blood pressure readings from the patient in room 308, he didn't even look at her.
"Where's the real nurse?" he asked, his eyes scanning the hallway as if Amelia were a ghost. "I am a registered nurse, doctor. The patient's systolic pressure has risen to 180 over—"
"I'll wait for someone qualified," he interrupted, turning his back to her and walking toward the nurse's station. "Sarah, can you give me an update on room 308? Sarah's face flushed with embarrassment as she glanced between Amelia and Dr. Hamilton. "Actually, doctor, Amelia was just trying to tell you that—"
"I prefer to get my information from reliable sources," he said coolly, not bothering to lower his voice. A few patients' family members in the nearby waiting area turned to look, their expressions ranging from curiosity to uncomfortable recognition of what was happening.
Amelia's hands clenched briefly at her sides, but her expression remained calm. She had endured worse than this, much worse. And tonight, like every night for the past 3 weeks, she was here for a reason that none of them could imagine.
As the night progressed, the pattern continued. Mrs. Henderson, an elderly white woman whose husband was recovering from heart surgery, looked right past Amelia when she entered the room with medications.
"Excuse me," Mrs. Henderson called out in a sharp tone. "I specifically requested a qualified nurse for my husband's care. He's had complications, and we need someone with proper training."
"I understand your concerns, Mrs. Henderson. I have my medications ready, and—"
"Could you please send in a real nurse? No offense, but this is serious medical care we're talking about." The woman's voice carried the kind of polite venom that was meant to sound reasonable while delivering a precise cut.
From the corner of the room, her adult son looked up from his phone with a smirk. "Mom's right. We need someone who actually knows what they're doing. Maybe you could clean the room instead. That seems more—"
The silence that followed was deafening. Amelia looked at both of them, her dark eyes steady and unreadable. "I'll make sure you get the care you need," she said quietly, and left the room. In the hallway, she pulled out a small notebook and made a quick entry. Date, time, names, exact quotes. She had been documenting everything for weeks now, and the pattern was becoming impossible to ignore.
"Rough night." Maria Santos appeared beside her, offering a sympathetic smile. "Don't let them get to you. Some people are just like that."
Like what? Amelia asked, genuinely curious about how her colleague would frame it. Maria shifted uncomfortably. You know, old-fashioned, set in their ways. They don't mean anything personal by it. Amelia nodded politely, but inside she felt a familiar mix of sadness and determination. Maria meant well, but she was exactly the kind of person who enabled this system by making excuses for it. The kind who would watch discrimination happen and then convince herself it was really about something else. The breaking point came at 4:17 a.m. Amelia was monitoring Mr. Chen, a Chinese-American man in his 60s who had been admitted with chest pains. His heart rhythm had become increasingly irregular over the past hour, and she was concerned about a potential cardiac event. She approached Dr. Hamilton, who was standing at the nurse's station reviewing charts.
Dr. Hamilton, I need you to look at Mr. Chen in room 3-4. His cardiac rhythm is showing concerning patterns, and I think he may be developing.
Stop, he said without looking up from his chart. I've had enough complaints about you for one night. Mrs. Henderson specifically called me to express her concerns about your competency. Mr. Patterson's family has also raised questions. I think it's best if you stick to basic tasks like taking vitals and changing sheets.
Amelia's voice remained steady. Doctor, this patient needs immediate attention. His EKG shows. Dr. Hamilton finally looked up, his face flushed with irritation.
The words echoed through the nursing station. Sarah and Maria both looked down at their computers, pretending not to hear. A respiratory therapist nearby suddenly became very interested in his equipment. The silence stretched long enough that everyone within earshot understood exactly what had just happened.
Amelia took a slow breath. I understand, doctor. I'll go check on other patients.
But instead of walking away, she pulled out her phone and sent a single text message. It's time.
Within 15 minutes, her phone buzzed with a response. Team is en route. Documentation ready for review.
At 5:43 a.m., 3 people in expensive suits walked through the emergency department entrance. They moved with the kind of quiet authority that made everyone they passed take notice. The lead figure was a tall white man with gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Behind him walked a black woman in her 40s, carrying a leather briefcase, and a Latino man with a tablet and serious expression.
Janet Morrison looked up from her station, immediately sensing that these were not typical visitors. Excuse me. Visiting hours are... We're here on official business, the gray-haired man said, producing a badge. I'm Director Michael Stevens, from the State Department of Health. We're here for an unscheduled inspection. The effect was immediate. Janet's face went pale. I wasn't notified of any inspection. Let me call the hospital administrator. That won't be necessary. We prefer to observe normal operations without advance notice. Director Stevens' eyes scanned the department. We'd like to speak with Dr. Hamilton first. As if summoned by his name, Dr. Hamilton appeared from around the corner, his face confident till he saw the badges. What's this about?
Dr. Hamilton, I'm Director Stevens. We've received serious allegations about patient care disparities and staff treatment in your department. We're here to investigate.
Allegations? I run a top-tier cardiac unit. I don't know what you're talking about.
The black woman with the briefcase stepped forward. Dr. Hamilton, I'm Inspector Janet Thompson. We have documented evidence of discrimination in patient care assignments, medication administration disparities, and hostile work environment violations. That's absurd. Who would make such ridiculous claims? Director Stevens looked around the room. Where is Nurse Washington? We'd like to speak with her.
Every pair of eyes in the department turned to look for Amelia, who was standing quietly by the medication cart, observing the scene with the same calm expression she had worn all night.
I'm here, she said simply.
Dr. Hamilton's face twisted with confusion and growing anger. You've got to be kidding me. She's the one making complaints? A nurse who's barely qualified to take blood pressure readings.
Actually, Doctor, Inspector Thompson said, opening her briefcase and pulling out a thick folder. We'd like to introduce you to Dr. Amelia Washington, graduated summa cum laude from Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, completed her residency in internal medicine at Mayo Clinic, followed by a cardiology fellowship at Harvard. She's currently serving as a special investigator for the State Department of Health, specializing in healthcare discrimination and patient care quality. The silence that followed was so complete that the only sound was the distant beeping of monitors from patient rooms. Dr. Hamilton's face went through a series of transformations: confusion, disbelief, recognition, and finally, horror.
That's impossible, he stammered.
Director Stevens continued. Dr. Washington has been working undercover in your department for 3 weeks, documenting systematic discrimination against both staff and patients based on race. She holds board certifications in internal medicine, cardiology, and healthcare administration. Sarah Kim's mouth fell open. Maria Santos dropped her pen. Janet Morrison looked like she might faint.
Over the past 3 weeks, Inspector Thompson read from her folder. Dr. Washington has documented 17 instances of discriminatory patient care, 12 cases of hostile work environment violations, and 6 serious breaches of medical ethics.
Dr. Hamilton tried to regain his composure. Even if that's true, she was deceiving everyone. She wasn't following proper protocols.
Actually, Amelia spoke for the first time since the investigators arrived, her voice now carrying a different authority. I followed every protocol perfectly. I provided accurate assessments, proper medical care, and appropriate recommendations. The difference was how that care was received based on your assumptions about my qualifications.
She walked over to the group, pulling out her own folder. For example, 3 nights ago, I correctly identified early signs of cardiac tamponade in Mr. Rodriguez in room 311. Dr. Hamilton dismissed my assessment because, in his words, housekeeping staff shouldn't be giving medical opinions.
I never said that, Dr. Hamilton protested.
Actually, you did. I have it recorded. Amelia pulled out a small device. State law allows recording in healthcare settings when investigating discrimination. Would you like to hear it? Director Stevens held up his hand.
That won't be necessary right now.
Dr. Hamilton, you'll need to come with us for a formal interview. Inspector Thompson will be reviewing all patient care decisions made during Dr. Washington's time here.
As the gravity of the situation sank in, Dr. Hamilton's arrogance finally cracked. This is entrapment. You can't do this based on some elaborate setup.
Dr. Hamilton, Amelia said quietly, every patient interaction you had with me was exactly how you would treat any black nurse in this hospital. I didn't set you up. I simply existed in your workplace while black.
The truth of that statement hit like a physical blow. Several of the nurses looked down at their feet. Janet Morrison's face was red with embarrassment and fear. Inspector Thompson addressed the room. We'll need to interview each staff member individually about the workplace culture here. We're particularly interested in patterns of differential treatment based on race, both among staff and in patient care. As Dr. Hamilton was led away for questioning, Janet Morrison approached Amelia with trembling hands. Dr. Washington, I had no idea. I mean, if I had known who you were.
That's exactly the problem, Miss Morrison, Amelia replied with gentle firmness. Your treatment of me should have been the same regardless of who you thought I was. Every nurse deserves respect and professional courtesy.
Maria Santos stepped forward, tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry. I knew what was happening was wrong, but I didn't. I should have said something.
I understand, Maria. Speaking up against discrimination is hard when you're worried about your own job security. That's exactly why we need systematic change, not just individual courage.
Sarah Kim looked confused and hurt. But why didn't you trust us? We could have helped if we knew.
Amelia's expression softened. Sarah, I needed to see the real workplace culture. If everyone had known I was an investigator, they would have behaved differently. The only way to document authentic discrimination was to experience it authentically.
Over the next several hours, the investigation unfolded like a medical procedure itself, methodical and thorough. Dr. Washington reviewed case after case with the state investigators, showing how identical symptoms in patients of different races had been treated with different levels of urgency and care.
Mr. Patterson, room 312, she explained, pulling up computer records. Came in with chest pain, immediately received priority treatment, extensive testing, cardiology consult within an hour. Mrs. Johnson, room 318, same night, same symptoms, black female, age 54. Waited 3 hours for basic assessment, told her pain was probably anxiety, nearly missed her actual heart attack.
Inspector Thompson made notes rapidly.
And Dr. Hamilton was responsible for both assessments?
Yes, and when I tried to advocate for Mrs. Johnson, suggesting her symptoms warranted immediate attention, I was told to stick to taking vital signs.
Director Stevens shook his head. How many similar cases did you document?
11 clear instances of differential care based on patient race. 6 additional cases where my medical recommendations were dismissed without consideration. And ongoing patterns of hostile treatment toward nursing staff of color.
The investigation continued through the morning shift change. As word spread through the hospital, Dr. Washington found herself at the center of a very different kind of attention. The morning charge nurse, a white woman named Linda Phillips, who had worked at the hospital for 20 years, approached her with obvious embarrassment. Dr. Washington, I owe you an apology. I've worked with Dr. Hamilton for years, and I've seen how he treats some staff differently. I always told myself it wasn't really about race, that he was just particular about protocols. I realize now that I was making excuses for discrimination.
Thank you for saying that, Linda. Recognition is the first step toward change.
What happens now? Linda asked.
Now we work together to build a healthcare system that treats every patient and every staff member with equal respect and dignity. It's not about punishment, it's about healing.
By noon, news of the investigation had spread throughout the hospital. Dr. Washington was called to a meeting with the hospital's chief administrator, Dr. Patricia Hawkins, a black woman in her 50s who looked both embarrassed and determined.
Dr. Washington, I want to personally apologize for what you experienced in our hospital. As someone who has faced similar challenges in my own career, I'm ashamed that we allowed this culture to persist.
Dr. Hawkins, I appreciate that, but apologies aren't enough. What's your plan for systematic change?
Dr. Hawkins pulled out a thick folder. We're implementing immediate reforms.
Mandatory bias training for all staff, anonymous reporting systems for discrimination, diverse hiring practices for leadership positions, and regular quality audits of patient care patterns by race and ethnicity.
That's a good start. I'd also recommend promoting more nurses of color to supervisory positions, creating mentorship programs, and establishing clear consequences for discriminatory behavior. Agreed. We'd like to offer you a permanent position as our Director of Healthcare Equity. You'd oversee all these initiatives and have the authority to investigate ongoing concerns.
Amelia considered this carefully. I appreciate the offer, Dr. Hawkins, but my work is needed in many hospitals, not just one. However, I'd be willing to consult with you as you implement these changes.
That evening, as Dr. Washington prepared to leave St. Mary's General Hospital for the last time as an undercover investigator, she was stopped by Maria Santos.
Dr. Washington, Maria said, her voice shaky with emotion. I wanted to thank you. I've been a nurse for 15 years, and I've seen so much discrimination that I started to think it was just normal. You helped me remember that it's not normal, and it's not acceptable.
Maria, you have the power to create change too. When you see discrimination happening, speak up. When you see colleagues being treated unfairly, be an ally. Real change happens when everyone takes responsibility.
Sarah Kim joined them, looking embarrassed but determined.
Dr. Washington, I keep thinking about all the times I laughed along with inappropriate comments, or stayed silent when I knew something was wrong. I want to do better.
Sarah, recognizing our own complicity is painful but necessary. What matters now is what you do going forward.
As Dr. Washington walked through the hospital corridors one final time, she noticed that something had already begun to shift. Staff members made eye contact, nodded respectfully, spoke to each other with more consideration. The investigation had created a mirror that forced everyone to examine their own behavior.
At the main entrance, she paused to look back at the building where she had spent 3 weeks being dismissed, insulted, and discriminated against. But she also saw it as the place where systematic change was beginning, where uncomfortable conversations were happening, where people were confronting their own biases and choosing to do better.
Her phone buzzed with a text from Director Stevens. Investigation complete. Formal report recommends federal monitoring and substantial policy reforms. Dr. Hamilton suspended pending formal review. Your work here will impact healthcare practices across the state.
Dr. Washington smiled as she walked into the morning sunlight. Her job was far from over. There were other hospitals, other systems, other places where discrimination was hiding behind medical degrees and institutional authority. But today, she had helped create a crack in the wall of indifference that allowed prejudice to flourish in healthcare. As she drove away from St. Mary's General Hospital, Dr. Amelia Washington reflected on the 3 weeks that had changed everything. She had entered as a nurse they could dismiss and ignore. She was leaving as a doctor whose work would reshape how they approached every patient, every colleague, every human being who walked through their doors seeking healing. The night shift was ending, but the real work of transformation was just beginning.